Hello, my name's Jade, and today we're going to be going through the books that I read in my second semester at university. I have another video where I talk about the books I read in my first semester. I go into detail a bit more about the modules I took and the course that I'm doing and stuff like that in that video, so I'll link that down below. In terms of modules that I took in my second semester, Intro to English continued over, so it was the same module as the time before. And Myth and Folktales was replaced with Foundations of Drama, same lecturer, same sort of deal. We looked at a bunch of different plays from across the ages, and there was a lot of myth stuff in there. Amount of reading, I had a lot less. I only had one book that I had to have for Intro to English. Intro to English this time was about short stories, and so every week would read 2 or 3 short stories, so it was a lot less reading. I might as well tell you the book now. It's the Oxford Book of Short Stories, edited by V.S. Pritchett. This one here, all these yellow tabs that you see along here, those are all the different short stories I read from this book. I didn't actually read the whole book, it's quite a big book. These orange ones are the ones that I ended up using in my assignment. So I'll tell you what those ones are. We have The Birthmark by Nathan Hawthorne, Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway, and we have Adora Welty's A Visit of Charity. I also talked about Daughters of the Late Colonel, and there's like 1 or 2 other stories that wasn't actually in this bind up that we looked at as well, but I can't remember for the life of me what they were. I liked some stories more than I liked others. Rule of thumb is those 3 that I just read out to you, these ones I liked because I studied them in depth. Hills Like White Elephants, I really liked. That one really stood out to me, and I think about it a lot. I think that'd be my favourite one that I looked at, favourite short story. Some of them were really short, a couple pages long, and really easy to read. Some of them were longer and more annoying. Some of them had a lot of really standout themes and good messages, and some of them I didn't really get. So there was a wide range. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. In terms of school reading, in terms of everyday reading, I'd probably give it about the same, actually. Then there's also the drama module, which was also less reading. Not necessarily amount-wise, I can't actually remember how many I read for the myth module, but more so because the plays are shorter. The first play we studied was Sophocles' Antigone. This is a bind-up that has Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Electra. We just studied Antigone. I quite liked it. This is Greek tragedy. I found it to be quite interesting. I found it to be very easy to read. Didn't have much problems with it. Lots of really standout themes. I wrote about this in my exam. Overall, was pretty happy with it. It's basically myth. It's basically reading Greek myth, more or less. So it was really interesting in that aspect, like the historical point of view of it. Yeah, I'd give it, in terms of school reading, like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, because there were so many strong themes, especially with like gender in there, which is what I wrote about in the exam. In terms of like everyday reading, I'd give it like a 7.5-ish. Next, we have Greek tragedy, Seneca. This is a bind-up of 6 different tragedies. The one that I read was Medea. I found it to be quite similar to Antigone. Again, lots of gendered stuff in there, lots of females going against male authority and male authority not liking it very much, and the scandal. This is kind of based off of an existing myth though, the Jason and Medea myth type situation. It's in Ovid's Metamorphoses. I remember being really mad at Medea. This is interesting to kind of get her side of it a little bit more, because you focus on her so much more than you are in the Ovid myth. At least that's what my memory is telling me. Again, I think it was pretty easy to read. A little bit more difficult than Antigone, but nothing insane. Like, it's fine. While at times the writing style was difficult, it was also quite interesting, and there were some really interesting word choices. Prettiness with the language, you know? I think I'd give this the same as I would Antigone. Give it like an 8-9 in terms of literature, and like 7.58 in terms of just normally reading books. Oh, we know what's coming next after Roman, of course, is the medieval period, which I hated just as much as I did in the myth module. If you've watched the video, then you know that I hated Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I hated the other one, the Celtic one, Mabinogion. Hated it. Couldn't stand it. Hated them. By far my least favourite of the ones that I've done. I have here Everyman and Medieval Miracle Plays, edited by A.C. Cooley. It was a really interesting time in terms of plays and drama, and I liked learning about that. I just hated the plays. Well, I didn't hate the plays. They weren't awful, because to be fair, they were quite short and they're quite simple. They're very religious, and so that makes it easier. But the writing style, man, it's awful. It's really difficult, and I hate it. And for each of these I had to look at summaries to help me understand what's going on. The 3 that I did were the Wakefield Second Shepherd's Pageant, aka the Second Shepherd's Play. That is kind of like a backstory to the 3 shepherds from the Nativity play. It's interesting, and it's a different look, and it's cool history wise, because obviously this is what times would have been like. We have Herod the Great, which was short and sweet and to the point, and well, okay, it wasn't as short and sweet as it could have been. It's like 10 pages, it could have been like 5. And then we have Everyman, which I didn't end up reading because the summary pretty much said we needed to know. So there's no point in me actually reading the thing I started and was just like, no. I didn't particularly like any of them. I guess Second Shepherd's Play is most interesting. Herod the Great I'm least reluctant to. They have some cool themes and I was prepared to write about them if I had to in my exam. But in terms of like normal everyday reading, I'd give it like a 3 or a 2, maybe a 4 at a push. 2 to 4. So let's just say 3, shall we? In terms of schoolwork, like a 4 at most. Next we come up to the Renaissance period, with a good old bit of Shakespeare, and we have Pericles, which I'd never heard before. Very shipwrecky, tragedy, bad luck type stuff going on here. There's like 2 shipwrecks in there. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't my favourite. I think it's probably, out of the 3 that I've already studied, it's probably my least favourite out of those 3, but that's not to mean I had anything against it. Story, plot wise, didn't have me. In terms of the other ones, I quite liked it still. I do of course have my big old plain and simple English version. I wasn't expecting it to be this big. I wasn't expecting one to exist, to be honest. I didn't think they'd have something for star books so obscure like Pericles. Also, another thing with Pericles is that there'd be points where my lecturer would be trying to be like, yes, this is the kind of thing Shakespeare's doing, right? And I'd be like, no, I don't see that at all. And that happened a few times. So in terms of like school reading for Pericles, I'd give it like a 6 or a 7. In terms of regular reading, I'd give it like a 7. We have another Renaissance play with Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. I have the text B version. Marlowe and Shakespeare had a little bit of a rivalry, actually. Dr. Faustus, it's a funnel tale. Reminded me so much of the picture of Dorian Gray. Sells his soul to the devil so that he can have 24 years of like hooliganery and like whatever he wants, magic and mischief and whatnot, and then he gets dragged to hell. I found it to be quite funny at times. I audiobooked it because it was so dense. I wrote one of my assignments on this one. In terms of analysing it, there is a lot to talk about, which is one of the reasons why I wrote about it. It was a bit naughty, especially for the time period. It was very naughty. And so I like reading things that were naughty of the time and being like, oh, scandalous. School reading, I'd give it like an 8. Regular reading, I'd give it like a 6 or a 7. Then we have J.M. Synge's, I've never had to say it before, I don't know. The Playboy of the Western World and Other Plays. The one that we looked at specifically was Riders to the Sea. It's very short. It's very interesting if you look at the context, like the Irish drama that was happening of the time. Told in an interesting dialect, which makes it difficult to understand, but that's okay because it's important, and I wasn't in love with it for that reason. But the story is interesting-ish, and I feel like if you were to analyse it properly, you could get some really interesting stuff. I feel like there's a lot of parallels between like what was happening in Ireland at the time of the play, and like lots of Irish mythology I think is under the surface, but I never actually analysed it that properly. I didn't go to the lecture where they talked about this one, and I already didn't really understand it anyway, so I just kind of didn't really think about it. Really bummed that I missed this lecture. It was like the one lecture that I missed. In terms of school reading, I'd give it like a 5. And in terms of regular reading, I think I'd give it like a 4. Ugh. Here, moving forward, a little bit more contemporary, we have Brecht, which is a name that I'd heard of, and he's kind of like a big deal because he set up his whole unique movement thing in terms of drama. We did The Life of Galileo, which I really enjoyed. Oh, it was so cute and so sweet. I really enjoyed kind of learning about Galileo because I didn't really know the story that well. The whole kind of science versus religion, I think it's very topical and very interesting. The way it reflects into the contemporary world I thought was really cool. The characters felt really real and vivid, which is interesting because I pictured it all so well as if I was reading like a book rather than a play. But Brecht has this thing where he's very obvious about the fact that, you know, this is an illusion, you are watching a play, you're watching a story, this is fictional, you know, just observe and think rather than spectate and have this fourth wall up. He's very much against that. Again, lots of the things my lecturer was trying to push onto us, I was kind of like, no, I don't see any of that. But that's okay, because I enjoyed it. In terms of like school reading wise, wasn't very good at analysing it though. So I would say that school wise I'd give it more of like a 7, whereas just general reading wise I'd give it like an 8 or a 9, because I really enjoyed it. It was so cute and so sweet, and I had so much fun reading it. The last one that I read, how many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The Love of a Nightingale by Timberlake Wurtenbaker. This is again another binder. This is an old myth, the Philomel and Procone, and they turn into birds in the end. I think I know the myth, but not 100%, you know, off by heart or anything. I think I'd read it at some point, but this was kind of like a contemporary feminist writing of it. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed that aspect. Again, like, I like myths in general, so that was cool. It was written really well. It was very Greek style, I think, at times. Again, I wrote about this in my exam with gender and Antigone. I would say that I wish the module had a bigger range of genres, and I wish that like there was more contemporary stuff, as well as like most of these are tragedies, so I would have liked some like comedies and like other genres in there. I'd give it like an 8 for normal reading, and then like a 9 for school reading, because it was quite good analysis wise. I think there was 7 or 8 plays, and then we have the short story bind up, and so those are all the books that I did for my second semester. There's another reminder that there's a video about the first semester, and when I read more books for semesters and futures I will make more videos about them. But that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, evening / night. My name's Jade. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye. I couldn't remember it detail for detail. I couldn't remember it exactly. Oedipus Rex. That's not annoying.